You're gonna have to forgive the thing here because this is gonna do whatever it's gonna do. We got clouds coming and going, and I'm shooting this in the middle of the day before I have to be somewhere. But right behind me is the first of what I'm hoping is many conversations where I get to sit down with people and talk about this faith and this hope that we have. Not through normal circumstances, right? So the name of this is called Pick Up Your Mat. And so the Pick Up Your Mat comes from, it's a play on scripture where Jesus is walking and he heals the paralytic man, the paralyzed man, right? Jesus has this encounter with this man. His life forever changed. He wants him to get up, but he specifies picking up the mat. And I've always wondered why, but it was explained to me that with this man being paralyzed, he would have been in the same spot for a very long time. And, he would have had this mat. He would have sat on this mat. People would have known him by being the man on the mat. And so when Christ came, had his encounter with him, heals him, tells him, now get up, pick up your mat, and walk. What used to carry you, people used to define you by, is no longer the identity. I want you to carry it, take it with you to show people what God, what Christ has saved you from, whatever that may be. For this man, it was a literal mat. For me, it was alcohol and drugs, penitentiary life. That was my mat, and that's the mat that I carry. As I go into this world to try to tell people my story of what the transformation in my life looked like, all through the grace of God. This is not going to be just some next faith-based podcast like that. This is going to be a no-holds-barred kind of conversation, because in real life, what I've learned is that, we're in a place where I think media culture kind of depicts the Christianity. I call it the Instagram Christianity, right? Where everything's cappuccinos and little adversity, but it's a family-friendly environment. This is not the Christianity that I knew. This is not the life that I lived, right? I don't know nothing about that life. The life that I was in and what God has saved me from was a life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's the best way that I can put it. And I know a lot of people, my friend, who I'll be introducing here in a minute, is one of those people, right, where we found our faith in the fire through the walls of penitentiary. I know people who have found their faith in the pits of hell, strung out here on the streets, women who are dancing in clubs, et cetera, right? Not every person has had this moment where they found faith in going to church and hearing a sermon and saying a prayer. I believe that true authenticity in search of faith is so real, especially when you come from a world where everything is the opposite of good, where everything is the opposite of safe and holy, right? When you come from a place that is so broken and wretched, and you become that existence of whatever that world is, and then now we try to go and say, hey, live this way, you gotta live this way. It's such a misrepresentation of what it means to be a man or a woman of faith in Christ. In my opinion, all of this is just my personal opinion. I think that the true authenticity in that relationship with Christ comes when you have to fight through the turmoils of who you used to be, going into who God has called you to be. Now that gap in the middle, that's what we're talking about here, because it's hard for me to get away from some of the old ways of life, especially, when things have been so chaotic for so long, and then now you get into a place of where you're called and your purpose and you're going out in front of people, but damn, there's still this part of me that just wants to fucking yell. There's just this part of me that still wants to break down and throw things and act like a child. And what I've learned is that in those moments, right, kind of like Paul with the thorn in the side, God says, it's okay, my grace is sufficient. We should try to correct, I believe, we should try to correct these behaviors as we go, but never negate the fact that they're there to begin with, right? I believe we don't get saved and then everything is supposed to be picture perfect and you can never mess up. And I think that's sometimes the the message that gets delivered, especially when you're in the when you're around a culture right now that is so surrounded by Christianity and church. I want to talk about these real authentic ways of communicating with each other. Christ has called us to build one another, right, through the power of our testimony, and we're not going to shy away from real testimony here. And so this first person that I'm going to talk about, this is one of those guys. This is my brother, Aaron Cosar.
All right, well, I guess to start, my name is Aaron Cosar, Oklahoma bred, Seminole. My dad was a Native American, my mom was Caucasian. So grew up in a blended family in that sense. Grew up actually in a really good home. Couldn't ask for a better home in all reality. My father was a deacon at an Indian church, so I grew around church most of my life. Where things transformed for me was, I was going to say I was 13 to 14, and there was a major incident that happened in my home community where a Native American was killed and by Caucasian, and it was kind of like, wasn't dealt with. And so AIM moved in on our property and started doing well, they were searching for the body, is what they were doing. And I just remember that I found it very fascinating, these Native Americans on their horses, and they had these guns, and I think they set up a couple of teepees on our property because supposedly the body was somewhere in my neighborhood area. And man, from then on, man, I just took a fascination for AIM, and my uncles were involved in AIM, so I rolled into that pretty quick. And but my uncles were alcoholics, so while my dad wasn't. And true to most Native Americans, we typically live with aunts, uncles, grandmas, dads. You can be with just everybody. And so I moved in with my uncle, and at a very early age, so it had to be around 14. At a very early age, he was an alcoholic, so I started drinking. Started learning how to throw a knife. He was your typical heavy-set Native American, would always palm my head, right, and slap me upside my head and said, "I'm trying to make you mean, boy." And so, boy, did he ever. And anyhow, but my parents were there, so back and forth. And then my uncle died when I was 15 and a half. And by that time, I remember really well because I was getting my driver's permit when he passed away, and that's when I found out I was an alcoholic also. I had to move back in with my parents entirely because I wasn't going back and forth with my mom and my dad and my uncle. And got drunk at school and got in trouble. And that was where things really took a turn. I mean, I jumped right off in that lifestyle very quick. Beat my father in my front yard, and I was drunk. And it basically severed the relationship with my dad and I. And so by the time I'm 16, 17, I ran away from home. When I say run away from home, this small town really was living with friends, cousins. Wasn't talking to my parents or any at all. Got in trouble again. Numerous times my dad would have to come get me out of jail. I would just tell him drop me off at the corner, some street somewhere, and I would leave, and I'd get in trouble, and he'd come get me out and all that stuff. And just grew just a distaste for my dad. He was a great guy, so he didn't do anything to me that warranted any of it. Just that alcohol and drugs just took over really fast. So by the time I was 17, 18 years old, I got in trouble, and they sent me to a juvenile home, and the option was go to the juvenile home or go to prison over some stuff. And I went to the juvenile home, got in trouble there, and then my dad, the sad thing, I think God, I look back now from a spiritual perspective of a relationship with God, God was trying to heal the relationship. My dad come to see me, and he was the only one that they would let me talk to. I was mad, right, because I didn't want to talk to my dad. But showed him some things my dad, what I was doing. He was real proud of me, and he wanted a picture of me. We took a photograph. I want to say I was 18. And they went home. My dad died the very next day. And I look back, and I think my dad was just trying to say goodbye. And relapsed again, got out, and then at the age of 19 and a half, went to prison for murder. And was in my incarceration piece some years into it. Just really angry, but my anger really was towards my dad a lot. It was a great guy. Just I don't know whether we just didn't click. I was always his right hand man, but he never used the verbiage, "Hey, good son," or "You did a good job." It was always, "When are you ever going to get it right?" And so I think that verbiage really messed my head up for a long time. But somewhere in my incarceration, I was still using drugs for a period of time, but I got in a treatment program because I got in trouble with this staff. And basically, he told me to get in his drug treatment program. He was going to ship me to Supermax, which was maximum security for the rest of my. I had a life sentence for murder. And I went to treatment, and one of the counselors said that, "Mr. Cosar, I noticed you never really talk about your dad." And I said, "Well, he's a great guy," and he was. He was a good church-going guy. Our family didn't want for anything. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor. There was always food on the table. Weren't the best of clothes, but they were clothes. And I said he was a great guy. And anyhow, my mother had sent me an old Polaroid picture. That's how long ago it was, of my dad and I. And I had it in my cell, and I was looking at it, and all of a sudden I heard a knock on the door, and it was that counselor. And she said, "You got a minute?" And I said, "Yeah." And I just happened to have that picture because she thought about my dad. And she said, "This is a picture of your dad?" And I said, "Yeah." And we're talking, and could never land my plane on forgiveness. Could never land my plane on why I did what I did or all that stuff. But she made a comment that really was healing for me, and I've held on to that to this day. And that was some close to 20-something years ago. She said, "Aaron, did you ever think that your dad knew that he was dying and that he wanted to take one more picture with you or one picture with you to tell you that he loved you and that it was okay?" And dude, Brother Frank, I broke right in that cell. I just cried, because I didn't have nothing to hang my hat on that there was forgiveness. Because I beat my dad up in the front yard, didn't get to ask his forgiveness, didn't apologize for any of that stuff, and then he died some years later. And so I hung my hat on that. That maybe that was God's way of saying that your father loved you, and still have that photograph to this day. It's in my house. And I look at it every single day. It's been one picture that's the only picture that I have of my father, and I look back at it and I say, you know what, we were okay. And I hung my hat on that and was able to find forgiveness for myself. And I think that was the healing process from my anger, my deliverance also from drugs, in the context of a relationship with God. Started serving God while I was in prison for a number of years. Some 15 years later, met a lady that while I was incarcerated, married her. We've been together now 26 years. And so she waited on me for 13 years. And
So Ryder.
Yeah, she's right. That's her biker name, actually, because I do motorcycle ministry. So her road name is Ryder. Yeah.
Well, before we get too far into
Okay.
the ministry part, I want to back up a little bit because there's a couple of things that you touched on that I know what you're talking about, but people won't know what you're talking about when you're talking about what do you mean by AIM when AIM moved in?
Okay, American Indian Movement. Back in the 70s, they came in and started trying to make a movement to restore the justice system for Native Americans. So that's what it was predominantly about. Obviously, it turned into other things later on, but that was the initial part, was to help Native Americans find their way when it came to cultural things, languages being restored back in the education department and things, to try to help keep that as far as the government pushing that completely out of our lives, right? So that was kind of where that came from originally.
Yeah. And then we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but like what happened, like how you got your murder charge, and like.
No, I don't mind. I've been so just like any other young Native American, I've been partying most of my life, and I'd gotten out of, my dad had died, and so still no recovery on the drug and issue. So I went to go. Well, actually, man, it's funny, man. I came home. One of my kids' mom. I have two boys, I have two boys, mothered by two different women, and I came home, and one of the ladies that I was at the time, man, everything was gone out of my house, and I was really trying to settle down. I really was wanting, I wanted to know what it meant to settle down, but the drugs were still a power factor, and everything was gone. And my youngest boy, and the baby crib was gone. I'm like, oh wow, that reality, right? Like, man, I need to do something different in my life. And it's going to be funny on the spiritual note. I went to church, and I went to church. Going to need something different in my life. And the preacher is funny. When I went to that preacher, that service, well, my old Indian church called Spring Baptist Church in Conroe, Oklahoma, and preacher was preaching on adultery, right? And I'm looking around over here. I'm like, everybody in this church, maybe 15, 20 people, and these are old people. Ain't nobody in this room. They must be talking about me. And so the preacher knew who I was and knew my father. And after service was talking to me and said, you know what you need to do. I said, yeah, but I just didn't know how to get off the alcohol.
Yeah.
And it was that very same night I murdered somebody. Just went and got drunk and was stealing guns. So booted a gun that a guy had, and he followed me from one bar to another. And obviously, I'm a 19-year-old, and I'm not sure how my victim was, but he's an older gentleman. And he started talking about guns. Well, I was fascinated with him. I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to try to get this guy drunk and steal his guns. Well, we were both drinking, but of course, I'm a 19 and this guy was in his 40s, so he can outdrink me any day. But but a 19-year-old, I'm thinking I can outdrink the guy. And ended up shooting him and by trying to snatch up one of his pistols. And so brought me to prison I had a life sentence.
And man, like that's so I get it for the drugs and being so consumed with, especially so young, because I did the same thing. I caught my first pistol charge when I was 12. But I mean, it was the same thing. It was, I was hanging around these people, and but I was already started drinking by then, because I think by 12 my dad was already gone, and so it was just mom and two brothers, and mom had an alcoholic drinking problem, so it wasn't hard for us to drink,
Right.
but we lived right outside of Tulsa, and so you get to hanging around with that crowd,
Oh,
the
yeah.
inner city crowd, and it's like, oh, well, we can do this, and I found my identity in that, and
Yeah.
I think that whenever I look back at some of the nights, because there were nights where just out of whether it was fear or just a blackout drunk or something
yeah.
like that, man, that my life could have went, the direction that yours did. It could have easily, have been somebody laying lifeless in a
Yeah.
parking lot because just because I partied, and I know when I speak to, like I was telling you, I mentor some kids down the way. And when I talk to them and I hear the anger and the pain in their voice, and most of them and it's this group home, it reminds me of the Carver Center.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
locked facility, right? They lock the doors in and out, and so they're not allowed to leave.
Right.
And I look at these kids, 12, 13, 14, and I'm just like, man, I know what I put myself in prison for,
Right.
And these kids just kind of got, bad parents, just bad roll of the dice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I listen to them, and all they talk about, most of them, all they talk about is how they can't wait to get out, and most of the times is they can't just wait to smoke. They want to
Yep.
smoke. They want to
Yep.
get high. They
Right.
want, and I look at that and I'm just like, if I could just give you what I got,
Right. Yeah.
and like
Give me a portion of my heart. Yeah.
Yeah, just come on.
And it is sad when it comes to our culture, man, that for so long we've normalized drinking, right?
Yeah.
And I know culturally speaking, I get ripped on it by some natives, and I'm okay with that now. It's just that, what is it doing for us, though? What is it doing for our culture?
Yeah.
What is it doing? And it's doing nothing but poverty, right? Destruction of homes, destruction of your life, incarceration, long incarcerations in Oklahoma specifically. And your children are left to their own devices because you're in prison with life sentences.
Yeah.
And so, it saddens my heart because we got to find something different for our native kids to do, and something they got to find some meaning, spiritual meaning and direction in our culture. They got to find something to do that they can say, this is relatable. And I know a lot of times, they don't think powwows are important and things like that, or stomp dances or whatever they do. But that's part of your family heritage. It's part of your ancestral heritage, and find the meaning and purpose in that. Do something different with your life then. Add some content.
Yeah, I know you're from like Lawton area. Yeah.
No, I'm from Seminole County.
Oh, Seminole
County, yeah.
My dad, my Cherokee side, they're from Salina and Jay.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just like these two areas breed knuckleheads where I got a little cousin, I don't know if he's out yet, but a lot of my family out there, like some of them live for that penitentiary patch, they live for that prison mentality.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess that's our way of taking back what's ours or something,
Yeah,
and
it's pretty bad in the system. I mean, there's all kinds of native gangs in the prison systems now, and finding that belonging, right? I think maybe some of our elders and some of our tribes have missed the mark a little bit on finding something creative for young people to do, marketing them some kind of way differently. And I don't want to just keep young people busy just for the sake of busy.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is for it. Nowadays it's all video games, right? I mean, it is, but I can truly say from my background, My dad taught me how to work. That's one thing I can say about my dad. And when I look back, like I said, when I got out of the system, I found myself saying, "Okay, Dad, I get it now. I get it now." You know, because I'm doing some of the same things. If my father were alive today, I'd probably doing the same things that he does. You know, now that I'm out of the system. But um, I think a person's just got to find some spiritual, whatever that looks like for them. My mind chose to be Christianity, but some spiritual life, some spiritual guidance that the Creator, you know, gives you meaning and purpose to do something positive for your Native people in this world, whatever it looks like. Beadwork, artwork. Most natives were creative that way. We were born that way. I mean, we're very creative people.
Yeah.
Our minds are creative, but the alcohol and drugs, you know, obscures that.
Yeah, yeah, we found our identity in it because I
Yeah.
know whenever I was in prison, that's when I really started to write creative writing,
Right.
you know, and then it's kind of it's went into like, I mean, obviously I'm telling
Right.
stories now. I'm trying to capture stories, but I'm trying to tell you know, hope and healing in video form because everything's, you know, video now. But going back to your prison sentence, like how long were you in there before you found that God could be a way out?
Well, I've been in prison for about 6 years when things started changing. There were a couple of events that kind of epiphanies, you know, or you know, we call them epiphanies, or those ha-ha moments. One was this deputy warden. I'd gotten into a fight and kind of helped expedite the process. Was I'd beat a guy up and split his eye open, and the warden pretty much said, "Listen, you know, either you get in my drug treatment program, I'm gonna ship you to McAllister, which is Supermax in McAllister, Oklahoma, where it's 23-hour lockdown." And that's where they like to stab each other every single day. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm this bad little Indian, but I think I'm 23, 24 at the time on their life's end. But I'm thinking also, I'm not that bad, and I don't want that lifestyle. I'm thinking, you know, and then the other was my two boys. They were of that age about that time, 6, 7. They didn't visit me every Saturday, but whenever they did come down, they wanted to know when I was coming home. And to hear that my two boys said, "Dad, when are you coming home?" And I'm trying to tell them I'm going to come home, but I'm really lying to them.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to come home.
Yeah.
I'm out here on the yard making homemade brew. I'm out here fighting. I'm out here stealing something to make some money. And so those were some of the moments where things kind of, you know, just a number of little bitty things that started causing my attention to change. And the other one was for prison life was I got tired of the police coming shaking my cell down. That got old. I
Yeah.
mean, just middle of the night, tearing up my cell, trying to find stuff. Putting the pressure on me, I guess, you know, a little bit. And then, so there were a number of different factors. And the one where it really transformed, and I would say it was God on this note here, on the more spiritual note, I was walking the ball field at this prison yard that was open, and I was contemplating working with some people to sell dope in prison. Because I had a life sentence, meaning I was never going to go home. This is my world now. So this is my city. This is my town. It's where I'm going to die at. And I truly believe that it was God that said this to me, even though I didn't know it at the time. But he said, "The choice you're about to make is the one you will die with." I'll never forget hearing that clearly in my head. Well, I knew that I didn't want to die in prison, a dope dealer.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted money, but I didn't want to die here. And so slowly though the process, I started giving up that life. And then a preacher was talking to me quite a bit, and somewhere around July of 93, I believe it was 94, accepted Christ into my life. I'm never, a lot of people have these specific dates, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get it. I admire that. For me, I was doing life sentence. I didn't care about days. I just was doing time. I didn't, one day, and I still struggle with that today. I can ask somebody, "Is this Friday, Monday? What day is this?" Right? But I got serious with God, and that's when things started changing for me. But even in the middle of that, there were some people that I had done time with, and people who came from my home community that knew my life would knock on my door, knock on my window. "Man, I know you got some stuff." And I said, "Man, I don't do nothing no more." And one guy in particular, a cousin of mine, "Man, I know you're playing that Christianity junk as a cover up, bro. I know you got some you got some weed in there." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't have no weed, man." And had to get stupid with him, like, "Dude, I don't do that anymore."
And it's funny how, like, whenever you start making the change, and you know, I mean, it might be family, it might be, you know, cellmates, friends, whatever, on the yard, people you run the yard with, you know. But I think behind that, you know, like there is an enemy, because I know whenever I was in prison and I started taking I started taking my word a little more serious, because I had my encounter with Christ the day that I got arrested, at like 8 p.m. at night, around there. But that morning was the morning that I gave my life to Christ in some rundown hotel in
Right.
Tulsa.
Right.
And the guy who he was a drug addict in
Right.
recovery. He was
Right.
just passing
Right.
through. I haven't seen him since. Only seen him the
Right.
one night.
Wow.
But he told me when I got on my knees and I gave my life to Christ, he told me, he said, your whole life is going to change
Right.
faster than you know.
Right.
And, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, but I've been in and out of the church,
Right.
but then that same day, that was like, sun was rising. And so that same day, I was arrested in another stolen car, and they were like, yeah, you're going to prison. Cause I was out on bail for one, and I was on paper for another one.
Right.
And so they were like, you're going to prison.
Right.
But when I got to the yard, I did the same thing. I was running around, I
Right.
was getting high. I remember I used to, over at the yard, I was at the Keys, and at the yard, they didn't care you were out past, lights out, as long as you weren't on their camera. That's what the call, he's like, don't be on my camera, don't be on the
No
camera.
camera.
So I had a table, and I'd set it up under the camera,
Right.
and I would just read,
Right.
and it was the only place that was light. But one night I was high. I had a brother, he got some, and he got some dope, and we got high, and I'm up 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm watching these guys run from, we lived in like a dorm cell, but it was like scurrying from, rack to rack.
Right.
And I'm sitting here like, man, they look like cockroaches,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I had this moment, and it was like, I'm in the same place that they are,
Right.
doing the same thing that they're doing.
Right.
The only thing is, I'm not trying to find more. I'm
Right.
just sitting here.
Right.
And that was my moment where it was like, I felt God was like, is this what you want to do?
Right.
Because like, you're looking at it.
Right.
And so as I started taking my word more serious, I got the same thing. You're just hiding behind the Bible. You're hiding behind the thing.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to not fall into that, that mentality of pride. I guess it was just ego. They're hitting my ego. It's like, I'm really trying to do something.
Yeah. I had to grow into that because, me being a Native American and the prison sits behind the fence, I also had become a leader in the Indian community.
Yeah, especially with the murder rap.
Yeah, yeah. And so I had become what they call old school. So they looked up to me in a lot of ways, and they expected certain things of me. So when I got saved and I started changing the direction I was going, they weren't comfortable with that. Because I was always over here and they could rely on me. And I look back and think, all it was somebody else's pawn, right?
Yeah.
And some things occurred throughout my incarceration that got worse a little bit in some ways, but also solidified my relationship with God. Without getting into much details, there was an incident went down, and I was going to do something stupid. And so I just confronted these guys, and I said, here's the story. Danged if I do, danged if I don't. If I don't go do something with you, well, I'm an apple. But if I do go do this stupid thing that you're talking about doing, they were talking about hurting somebody, I thought you were a Christian. So no matter what decision I'm about to make, you're not going to like it anyhow. So here's the deal. I got to be okay with the decision I'm going to make for me. Now, when I did that, man, it put a river between us. It separated, right? And I wouldn't say it got better, but I'd also say I wouldn't say it got worse, but I wouldn't also say it got better, But with my Native people, it got worse because, Aaron's no longer us. But at the same time, I was always the Native that could come, hey, Aaron, would you go help us get this done, get that done? I'm like, well, wait a minute, you don't like me, but you want me to go talk to the staff to get an event going on for the Indians? So it was a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I stayed involved with it because I wanted to be with my Native people, and with my own culture. And so over the course of time, there were some rough days, but over the course of time, I think most Natives respected the decision I made. So I had a lot of good Native friends, but I also realized there were some who didn't want anything to do with me. And I just grew that I had to be okay with that.
Yeah. I know when I was in prison, I leaned hard on that. You will be persecuted for my name.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know if anybody else out there who's went through it, like a Native American who gives his life to Christ in prison, you will get it. Like you get it right out the gate.
Yeah, right out the gate. I got told I couldn't sit at the Native American table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's funny you said the apple thing, and like people don't know what
the apple. People mean apples means red on the outside and white on the inside, right?
Yeah. So how did you go from never gonna see the light of day again, never gonna walk free, to us having this conversation here?
Oh wow, okay. So that was an interesting story. So I was working at the chapel, got the opportunity to work up there. So I was there for like 15 years. So I think God strategically allowed me to be in certain places. But let me step back a minute. So 93, 94, during this period of time of my transformation, lifers were allowed to work outside of medium security fence like a trustee. But then policy changed and they brought us all back in. And what I mean by that is some people committed some crimes, and so they changed that policy for anybody that had a life sentence that had been in a while to work at a lower security. So they brought me back behind the fence at a medium, what they call medium maximum security, and I was working at this chapel. The same deputy warden actually was the same one that told me to get in treatment programs. So it's funny.
Yeah.
He's there, and I'd like
Different facility though?
No, same facility. Same facility.
Yeah.
And so they had watched me grow to this person from 1988 at this facility, and this was like 93, 94, right? So they watched the dumb stuff to where I got saved and I was going to church. And so he said, Aaron, I'd like for you to go work at the chapel. And I'm like, I really didn't want to go to work up. I wanted to go do something different. But I said, all right. So it really was the best thing for me, because that's where I started learning how to, one, get real with God, read my Bible better, become more of a servant's heart, kind of operated in the role of a pastor, if you will, even though that wasn't my title, because everybody came to the chapel clerk for guidance of some kind. So you prayed with people, you talked to people who dead, mama died, or brothers on drugs, whatever. So you become that a little bit outside the chaplain himself. But so when things started changing there, met an organization that brought in a program somewhere around 97, 96, somewhere around 95. I don't remember. 95, a program on how to be successful with your marriage while you're incarcerated. And I'd already met a lady, so it had to be after 98, yeah, so it was in 2000s. And so I started teaching this class while I was in prison, and this particular organization my 2001, I come up for parole. So this lady wanted to watch my parole hearing. So back then, you got personal appearances. It wasn't video. It was personal appearance.
Yeah.
So I went up and I got denied. And this lady says, I don't get it. And I said, well, she said, I've been watching you for 6 months and you seem to be somebody that's got your act together. And I said, well, ma'am, I said it just like this. And I said, ma'am, I'm not here for stealing candy, okay? I killed somebody. I'm okay with that. I've come to terms that this is probably the end of my life. Though I want out, dreamed it and hoped it, prayed about it, all that other stuff, but I also leaned back on the side, hey, I got a life sentence. Most people with life don't get out of prison. Went back up for parole again another year. She wanted to attend it. She watched and she says, I don't get this. And I told her again, I said, I was denied. And I said, listen, I'm not here for stealing candy, okay? I took a human life. And well, she took it upon herself, meeting with my wife, told my wife to bring a picture of us up to her office, and she said, she put a picture of my wife and I, one of our wedding pictures, and she said, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, but I really feel God's called me to help him get out. So she worked on my case for 7 years. 7 years she was doing something. Meeting with political people, meeting with the governors, meeting with the district attorney that prosecuted me. She put me out there on the social media. So if you was to Google my name, you'll find all kinds of stuff out there. She got my name out there. She even sent my wife to New York City to be on TV with, I don't remember who it was, a TV talk show about prison marriages. I don't remember, Montel Show. Yeah. I tease people all the time. I sent my wife to New York and I didn't have a penny to do with it, but I was in prison. But, so she started working on my case. So her and another lady, I won't mention her name because she's a political lady, she's a Native lady I had met, kind of simultaneously met with the governor at that time, along with my wife and a couple other people. And one went in there and said, hey, listen, I know I'm not supposed to do this politically, but there's a gentleman that I know in prison. I've known him since he was like about 20 years old. I'd really like for you to look at his case. And the governor says, it's funny, I happen to have Mr. Cosar's paperwork right on my desk right there. She said, well, I'd like for you to take a look at it. She said, I know I'm politically not supposed to be involved in that stuff, but I just think he'd be a great candidate. Well, about that time, within a day or so later, he had it there, but the people that were helping me come up for parole had finally got a face-to-face meeting with him. And so that's kind of how it happened. He commuted the governor at that particular time, gave me the dream of my life, which was commute my life sentence to a number that I could discharge so that I didn't have to worry about. Paper time means parole time. A supervisor would come and watch me every month, come to my house, and so I had collected enough what they call earned credit days that I was able to discharge a 65-year sentence after serving 25 solid calendar years of my life. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. So I discharged and
Yeah.
walked out a free guy.
Yeah, God is good.
Yeah.
So okay, so I met you because I was at the Carver Center, which
Yeah.
isn't too far from here. I was just getting out of prison, and I got into the teen program, and I remember when you first came in there, you had this scarf on. It was wintertime. It was around December,
Yeah.
and you had this pink button-up shirt,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And when I seen you, and I'm a knucklehead, I just got off the yard,
Yeah.
you know, and I see you, and I remember thinking you were talking about, you know, life after prison, and in my mind, I'm like, what are you gonna tell me? You've never,
Yeah.
you don't know what I just went through,
Yeah.
you know, because I didn't know who you were.
Right.
And then that first time you got up there and you talked, and you were like, you know, you said you were Native American,
Right.
and you discharged a murder sentence, 25 years. And it was funny because in that moment, it was just like both the spiritual side and the penitentiary mentality side was like, I got to shut up and listen to this guy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because even if it was yard stuff,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
prison stuff, like some brother who did way more than I did, you know.
Right.
And I think it was in that moment, it was like, and then you started talking about how God changed your life, and I was still battling with faith, especially just getting to walk out, you know, and then like the world is my oyster again, and I can go do whatever. And I moved into a sober living house that really wasn't a sober living house. It was took work for me to try to stay clean and sober there. But that's where I met you, and I remember I did time with your son over at Granite,
Yeah.
you know, and so the way that God had kind of set this up, you know, and then when I seen you, I knew it was possible,
Right.
you know, because I remember when I first pulled up to Lexington, the day that I pulled chains and I pulled up there, I remember this overwhelming feeling of my life is over,
Right.
you know, my life is over and this is all I will ever be.
Right.
And then the day that I get out, I see you, and it was like my life can be something different,
Right.
you know, it can be.
Right.
But you were there to help people who were on their way out.
Right.
So what do you do today?
All right, so I left that agency working with reentry, which I do miss, quite frankly, because I love reentry better, really, honestly. But I work for an organization called Prison Fellowship. It's Chuck Colson Prison Fellowship Ministries, one of the largest prison ministries in the nation. 50 years old this year, and left that organization, went there. And so what I do now is I teach kind of the same material. I teach a faith-based program behind the fence to lifers, people going home. I enroll roughly 35 men per year, and I've been doing this now for 7 years. So I get to go back to the same group of men, whatever ages are, whatever background culture, that are doing life sentences, try to keep their hopes up that, hey, maybe I can get out one day. I mean, I always dreamed and hoped that I'd get out, but I never know, right? You're doing a life sentence, so I'm not trying to not sound faithless. It's just that it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I go in there and just basically say, listen, I don't know where your dream is, where your faith is, but I'm gonna dream big for you, okay? Since you can't see it, I was once there where your mind is at, but I'm on this side of the mindset now. So I'm going to use my faith mixed with your faith to say, hey, let's think big to get home, all right? Don't know what it looks like. Don't know when it will be. Have no clue.
Yeah.
But I believe that if God can open the door for me, then he can do it for the next guy.
Yeah.
I love working with the incarcerated population because I think my story is a story of redemption. If God can redeem my life, then he can redeem somebody else. No matter what it looks like. When you're talking about hopelessness, you know, when I first had the life sentence, I remember I was 19 years old at this prison where I was at, and I turned around. I think I went up there to get an aspirin or something to the control room there. And when I turned around, I looked at this massive dorm of 200-something people, and I fell backwards kind of like in a daze. And that reality hit me. I'm like, I'm not going to use the language, but I'm like, crap, I got a life sentence. I'm going to die here. That reality hit me. It's like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I can't go home now. I can't say, can we take this shot and redo this? It's over with. It's done. And I think that's why I slipped off into that mindset, you know, of do whatever you do in here to survive. And I can still remember that emotions, and that was some 30 years ago, in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear and that lump in your throat, like, golly, this is it. But here, so now that my life has changed and where God's brought me, I'm also here to say, listen, man. I use it like as if we was to put Frank, if we was to put take a whiteboard, right? Now I do this. I don't know if you remember. I did this when I was at team. I like to lean against the whiteboard and just as, ever so gently as much as I can, put a dot there, and I'll put like 1985, and I'll put down 2025 somewhere. You're throwing out a number, and I'll ask everybody, "Can you see that dot?" And they'll say, "Well, just barely." And I said, "That's what this moment is. Yeah. It's just a dot. Your life is not over yet.
Yeah.
Hope is not complete yet.
Yeah.
We don't know what it's going to look like at the end, but somewhere along the way, we got to believe that God can redeem your life. But you got to take the first step and start making changes. Mm-hmm. Be it accept Jesus Christ or don't, right? Preferably, I wish that people do. But if they don't, hey, I'll take you where I'll take what you're willing to offer, because I'm gonna believe that your life is redeemable in some way, shape, or form. You know, I just want to be there to help, whatever that looks like. I don't care about your culture. I don't care about your race. I don't care about your gender. I just want to be there to help you, because I think I'm a collaboration of all the good people that came into my life and tried to inspire me to behave.
That's good.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not Aaron Cosar by himself. No way, shape, form, or another. I'm Aaron Cosar because, I'll just start some names. Former Warden Jack Calley, Ray Little, Don Eldridge, Chief of Security. I won't mention some other staff names because they're still alive today.
Yeah.
You know, some staff people and volunteers that poured into my life and said, wait a minute, I see something valuable in you. And so these people spoke life into me, encouragement. So I do the same thing. You know, I'm hoping I'm just one person in somebody's life to try to, but that's what I do now. Work at a prison. I went to work back at a prison where I did time at for a while. I'm at what they call Great Plains now. So I run 2 programs out there with another coworker. There's 2,100 inmates out there. And these are knuckleheads. These are people that are just, you know, sense of hopelessness, multiple life sentences, but you hope you can keep them inspired to get off the drugs and do something positive. And a good majority of them are, but still some of them are struggling.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because it's so easy to lose hope in the face of you're never going home.
Yeah. I've got lifers out there now. You know, that some people are doing 2 or 3 life sentences. And Oklahoma implemented this other law called truth in sentencing at 85%. So to tell you the story of hopelessness, I remember talking to a young man somewhere around the 2000s, 2002, somewhere around there, 4 or 5, trying to get him to behave. Young Indian kid, good looking Indian boy. You know, he was creating problems on the yard, and I'm like, dude, you're creating problems for the skins. You're just creating problems, okay? Man, F this, F that. And I'm like, I get it, man. He said, man, Aaron, he said, I want to say he was 22, 23, somewhere in that age. Aaron, I have 75 years at 85%. What the F are you going to say to me? And I sat there and thought, he's 23 already. He's got to do 74 flat years of his life before he can even walk out the door. And I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing to offer this kid to change unless he wants to change on his own. He's going to die here. And that was going to put him at 90, give or take, or 80 before he even walked out the door if he survived that long. That's when that reality hit me that, wow, man, this new law that's in Oklahoma really has transformed our Department of Corrections of hopelessness. And so only God can restore it and fix it. I do know people who have gotten off those kinds of sentences, but they got to start making some changes while they're incarcerated. So I'm just trying to be there to inspire that, to get their life together, right? You know, so... and it comes from a situation where when I was at a facility, it's what motivates me, not on my relation with God, but this one does. So I remember we was asking this warden if we could do an all-night prayer meeting at a visiting room, you know, bring in the new year, right, for New Year's. And security says no because you got to lock down at 10 o'clock at night. They got everybody, you got to be in the cell. And we'd fought this vision, this desire to do this for 2 or 3 years. And finally one year this warden said, all right, y'all can do that, but you're going to only have 2 people off each unit, which only mean 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 men in the yard. So I'm like, well, I'm going to be one of them because I'm the one trying to make it happen. So I go down there. And I remember being in the corner of this visiting room, laying on the floor and crying out to God with my own walk with God. I said, Lord, help me to be an inspiration. And he made this comment to me. Frank, he said, I'll make you a spark. And I remember arguing with God. I said, a spark. I said, dude, I said, God, I don't want to be no spark. I said, I want to be a fire. And he said this, a fire can't get started until it's first a spark. And so that's why I try to spark life. Let God do the rest. Let God catch the fire. I just want to inspire. Like let's find that little spark of hope. Yeah. Some kind of, I don't know what it looks like. Every story is different. Let's find it because it's there. Yeah. We just got to find it. Yeah. And so that's what motivates me to get up every day and work in the prison systems. That's what drives me. I mean, after spending 25 years in prison now, working there, it's stupid, right? Because sometimes I go in there, I'm like, what was I thinking coming to work here? Man, was I like that? Yeah, you were like that. Yeah, so I love it.
It's a surreal moment, man. Whenever, I know we did that thing last year before, over at Lexington.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of sitting there and I could see A&R, you know, like the unit where I was like, man, I was just there. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, I will never come back here. Yeah. You know, like never. Yeah. You know, but God has different plans, you know, and in the same way that you were, you know, God took your decisions, man, and built this incredible story, you know, of grace, right? Because like I think I listened to your story, you know, and all the people that went to bat for you, and you know, the people who were, you know, put in this place to do that, and it's like, oh, there's a paper here already, you know. I look at that and I'm like, you had nothing to do with it, you know?
I didn't have anything to do. I was just doing what I'm supposed to do.
I think the number one, and I've been trying to explain it to some of these kids, it's like when you learn acceptance, you'll learn surrender. Yeah. You know, you can't surrender what you haven't accepted yet.
Right, true.
You know, when I accepted the fact that, you know, like going to the drugs and alcohol, when I accepted the fact that when I drink or I put drugs and alcohol in my body, I push myself in places that I know I should not be. When I accept the fact that I cannot handle my alcohol, I cannot handle my liquor, I accept it, then I can surrender it. Right. You know, and in the surrender, I found freedom. I've traveled now more in the last 2 or 3 years. I just got back from Mexico, you know? Like I never thought I'd go to Mexico. We went to Cozumel, we went on a cruise ship, and it was incredible. And the whole time I'm out in this ocean and I'm just looking, and I remember, you know, not too long ago, and my mind was like, this life that I'm living now, like I never thought that it was for me, you know? I never thought that I would have money to go and travel. I never, you know, and so I automatically hated people who did that stuff. And now that I get to be this person, and I look at all the series of events that happened in my life, and how a lot of it was me making a decision out of selfishness and God using that selfish decision to create the man that I am today. And it's like selfish decision, God's decision, you know, it's just a series until...
I think there are layers of decisions, because I remember when I first met you, right? You know, I love working with my Native people when I see them doing, and to see where you're at right now, I think, wow, I tell people about your story all the time. You know, I remember when you got out, you were going to go home for a minute. I remember telling Frank, I don't know if going back home was really important right now, but I understood the concept, because it's the umbilical cord that draws us home, especially Native people. And I wish we had other options, but there are not a lot of options out there for us, you know, so we do have to go home. And, but I remember when, you know, you got out and we kind of lost contact for a minute, then we reconnected, and to see what you're doing now, it's like, you're an inspiration to me. So I don't know what you're talking about. You really are. I tell other young Native men about you all the time. I tell them, I got this friend, man, and in my office, if they're in my office, I'm not kidding you, I say, sit down for a minute, pull up a chair, I'll type in YouTube, listen to my bro, right? And they're like, man, he's pretty good. I said, well, don't tell him because his head gets too full. But I tell him, I said, you know, this could be you, right? And when I'm talking to young Natives, this doesn't have to be you thugging life out here. Yeah. He found his gift. He found his gift, and he's walking, and you know, he's found out his talent. And now you're doing this podcast, expanding your horizons. Right? There's no telling what God's got in store for you. Yeah. And so you're an inspiration to other Natives as well, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I mean, yeah. The only thing different in my story is, man, I think the other thing that's in my story is, we didn't get into, but I love to mention is my wonderful wife of 26 years. She met with me while I was in prison, waited on me for 13 years. Put up with my ignorant Native American Indian stuff, and but amazing soul. she's the one that has probably taught me more thing about life, giving. So where it all started on one was we was in the visiting room and visiting the yard actually, and she come to visit, brought me some, they brought the money in, and so she had bought me like a sandwich and a bag of chips and a candy bar and I think and a pop. And she said, "You need anything else?" And I said, "I'm thinking, no, I'm not thinking not right now, right? I'm thinking later." And she gets up from our table and walks over, and I see her in the distance where the vending machine. There's a young lady there, and she had like 5 kids or 4 kids. And I'm watching her take her money. I'm saying I'm gonna use mine, but I'll get back to taking my money, putting it in the vending machine, and giving it to kids. And she comes back to the table, and I'm like, I remember making this statement: "What are you doing, giving my money away?"
Yeah.
Like it was my money, right? I didn't walk in. I didn't have a job. It was her money. She said, "Well, I heard that mother make a comment. The kids want something to eat, but she said, listen, I just brought enough money down here buy Dad something to eat, visit for a couple hours, and gas money. We'll fix something when we get home." And I wanted to give them something. And I looked at my wife, and that was a turning point for me. I looked at her and I said to myself, or looked at my wife when she made that comment, Justine, I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be nice to people like that. It's not my family, because prison breeds individuality.
Yep.
Selfishness. I got to take care of my own. It's my life sentence, ain't yours. You're not going to do my time for you, whatever your numbers are. Yeah. And so you can relate to this. It's like, that's mine, right? And I got to get mine before somebody. And so I'll never forget, that was a transformational moment for me but I want to be like that. I don't know how to do that, but I want to be like that. And so some 26 years later, I love to give of my time and my money whenever possible to people. But my wife will make them, well, baby, I said, well, just give it to them. Well, they need $300. Okay, well, I'll make some money.
Yeah.
The money's getting made every day, so I'll make some more. Yeah. I may have to go to extra job somewhere, but it comes from her. So she's taught me how to be kind to people. God's used her immensely on teaching me how to be patient, because I don't know how to love like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. There's no sense in lying. I did not know how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Yeah, man.
For real,
yeah,
man.
yeah. I'm glad I got to. Hopefully, some people, it will benefit them. Just, I guess just no matter what your situation is, whatever you're facing, you don't have to be in prison to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
Maybe your prison is your own mind, and you want to make some changes. You just gotta find some people that you can trust in, and I know that's difficult in this day and age. Reach out and find that one, and then build off the one. The next you got 2 people, then those 2, then build off the third. Until you find you a good nucleus of people that, when you're having bad days and you're struggling, that they can help you walk through it and won't reject you. And even if you fail miserably, at least they're still there. So
yeah,
that's
all
the
right,
key.
Man. Well, I love you, bro.
All right,
really
love you,
appreciate it, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right.